Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all my Albaz Yugioh deck profile for post the Albaz Strike structure deck. The Albaz deck is a deck we've been getting support for a good while now from the latest Yu-Gi-Oh booster sets, and with this latest structure deck, we were given more support for this fusion type of deck that focuses on using the Fallen of Albaz with all of its many different fusion monsters and fusion support with the new stuff from the structure deck, along with the stuff we've had from a lot of the main booster sets. I may focus on a deck profile in the future that uses the majority of the Despia support along with the new Albaz cards, but that seems more like a Despia deck using those cards, and we will be getting reprints for those cards for a good amount of them in the Ghost from the Past Series 2 set, so they'll be a little more affordable at that time, and then I'll focus on that deck profile. I wanted to mix in, like I said, the majority of the stuff from the structure deck with some other cards that definitely do help with the fusion playstyle of the deck, so let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. We'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. I'm running 3 Fallen of Albaz. It was reprinted in the new structure deck, but it was also available in the Megatins and the original set that it came out in. If this card's normal or special summon, except during the damage step, you can discard 1 card, fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from either field as fusion material, including this card, but you cannot use other monsters you control as fusion material. You can only use this effect of Fallen of Albaz once per turn. So it's your main go-to card for all of your different fusion summons. Cards like Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon, need a Fallen of Albaz, and then 1 fusion Synchro Exceeds or Link monster, so being able to use your opponent's resource for that card is the big play with that. And also with cards like Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, needing 1 Fallen of Albaz, and a Dark monster, making it all the easier. Another card that definitely does help with just getting out Fallen of Albaz much more quickly is the Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous. I know it's more of a pricier card to get a hold of, but it definitely does help with the actual search power for Fallen of Albaz. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, once per turn this way, and you can only use each of the following effects of Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, once per turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you contribute this card to special summon 1 Sword Soul monster or 1 Fallen of Albaz from your hand or deck. During the end phase, if a fusion material was sent to your graveyard this turn, add this card from your graveyard to your hand. So the fusion monster option for that graveyard send can help to recycle this card back into your hand, but being able to special summon out Fallen of Albaz is a very important part of using this card in the deck, because then that will be your play after special summoning your Fallen of Albaz onto the deck to the field to then go for the fusion summon. And I also run 3 Spring-Ins Kit. If you have a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material on your field or in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card's normal or special summon, you can add to your hand 1 of your branded spell or traps that is banished or in the deck or graveyard, then place 1 card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. You can only use each effect of Spring-Ins Kit once per turn, so this can help to get cards back into the deck that you can use as another resource, which I'll show in just a bit with some of the added fusion support I am running, but also for the fact that the card can be in your graveyard. Just gives you another special summon of a monster on the field to make full use of for a lot of different fusion plays. One of the big fusion monsters to get out is one of the newer ones we got from the latest Yu-Gi-Oh booster set, and that is Guardian Chimera, needing 3 monsters with different names, and also be using fusion monsters from your hand or field with at least 1 monster from each as a resource on the field that you can use by special summoning out. It can be then used for that fusion play. And also for the rest of the Albaz support I run in the deck, I also run 1 Albion, the Shrouded Dragon, along with giving you plays and setup from the graveyard, either by special summoning this card, depending on what you sent for a Fallen of Albaz or branded spell trap from your hand or deck to the graveyard. It was from the deck. You can place this card on the bottom of your deck, and then also being able to special summon it, it was placed from the hand as more of a resource to get this big dragon on the field. That also will count as Fallen of Albaz. And I also decided to go with the Shaddoll lineup. The Shadolls are a little more easy accessible compared to the Despia cards for people looking to play this deck. Like I said, I may focus on a Despia build later on in the future after Ghost from the Past. But for the Shaddoll lineup, I run 1 Shaddoll Beast, 1 Hedgehog, 1 Squamata, 1 Dragon, and 1 Aerial. I thought of running the Wendigo, but it focuses more on the Shaddoll setup, and with this deck, we're mostly using the Fusion play setup with the cards we send to the graveyard, so being being able to use these cards along with the Shadal cards and some of the other Albaz cards for a lot of the different Shadal fusion plays, including using the light attributes for Construct and the dark attributes for Winda. It helps with that setup and the many different fusion spells we use for the Shadal cards. And then for the rest of the monsters from the main deck, I just run 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, just the hand trap of choice in the deck. I know Effect Veiler and Ghost Ogre were more readily available in the structure deck, but I still find this one to be one of the better ones to use for just shutting down your opponent's plays, especially since this is a preferred going second deck, relying on a lot of the resources, going for what your opponent may have to special something on the field. So being able to at least shut down your opponent's plays and then go into your plays the following turn is another big choice for this card. And that is it for the monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. I run 3 Branded Fusion. You fusion summon 1 fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material from your extra deck, using 2 monsters from your hand, deck, or field as fusion material. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters the turn you activate this card, and you can activate 1 Branded Fusion per turn. So what's great about this card is it doesn't really shut down your Shadal plays. It just allows you to, go for the fusion setup, which is the majority of what we run in the extra deck to begin with. So even if you go for the branded play first and then summon out one of your Albaz fusion monsters, you still have the options to then summon out your Shadal monsters onto the field for more of a lockdown against your opponent using this card. And I run the 1 Branded in white. It's more of a recyclable card in the deck, but still a fusion option to use against your opponent. So that's why I like running the 1 for this play, and as another added fusion searchable setup card in the deck altogether, being a branded card, since you can then search it out with your Spring-In's kit as one of the branded searchable spells. Since we are running the Shadal lineup in the build as well, I run 3 Shadal Fusion as more setup for cards in the graveyard to use with your fusion plays. The majority of what I'll send are the Shadal cards. I can make use of the plays my opponent may have by using the extra deck monsters to send Shadal cards from my deck to the graveyard, and then having that additional extra deck monster on the field, I can then use with my Fallen of Albaz as the resource to use for the fusion play. I always like to do the Shadal fusion play first, because if I don't have that resource on my opponent's field to use for the fusion play that I can use with Fallen of Albaz, then I kind of miss out on that resource altogether. And once again, as I said earlier, with this day being a go second deck, I run 3 Dark Ruler No More. I prefer this card main decked. It always can be a sided out target if I fear my opponent is going to go second against me, but then I can use this to shut down my opponent's extra deck monsters on the field and then make full use of them with Fallen of Albaz, since a lot of those resources can either stop it on the field, like cards like Borreload Savage Dragon, but with this, there's no response to my opponent. The only negative about it is that they won't take any damage this turn, but I can get rid of some pesky monsters on the field on a board they may have been trying to set up altogether. And I also run 2 Super Polymerization. I would like to run 3 of this card in the deck. I have the 1 Foolish Burial as just an additional spot filler, since we are running a good majority of Shadal monsters as an added send option to the graveyard. But 3 Super Polymerization can definitely help with more fusion resources. I run a good number of other fusion cards in the deck, including the Starving Venom fusion lineup and the Predaplant monsters for the Dark Attribute monsters my opponent may have. So being able to use those cards against them is another reason why I like running 3 Super Poly in the deck. But once again, I have the 1 Foolish Burial as just a placeholder. And for some of the one-ups for the spells, I run 1 El Shadal Fusion, another, Shadal Fusion searchable card in the deck to use. 1 Polymerization, I run the 1 of this. It does come up at times when I can draw it. I also thought of running Vert Anaconda as a means to use this card in the deck more freely, so I can summon out Guardian Chimera with its additional option not being able to be targeted by card effects from my opponent. But you can utilize it more if you do run the Vert Anaconda in the extra deck. I would show what to take out. Just remember, you are limited to the fusion plays with branded fusion, so that's the one reason I decided not to run Vert Anaconda in the deck altogether. And then lastly, the 1 Call by the Grave, just like it, for more shutdown of my opponent's own graveyard plays that they may try to use against me. And that is it for the spells. We'll now move on to the traps. I run 2 of the new branded Retribution. When a spell or trap or monster effect is activated, that includes an effect that special summons a monster. Return to the extra deck 1 face-up fusion monster you control, or 2 fusion monsters in your graveyard that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material. If you do, negate the activation. If you do, destroy that card. And you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 branded spell or trap in your graveyard except for branded Retribution and add it to your hand. More recycle power with the branded fusion that we run in the deck, just being being able to re-add that card back to our hand to reuse again is a big part of this trap in the deck. I also run the one Shaddoll Schism with the Shaddoll lineup we're running again as an added search setup for fusion summoning out some cards on the field, especially during my opponent's turn. And lastly, for the traps, 3 infinite impermanents, just another way to shut down my opponent's hand by having a trap I can activate on their own turn if they decide to go first against me. Once again, it's the preferred thing I would say to do, going second with this deck. So being able to just stop an effect negation on the field and then also have Ash Blossom as an additional hand trap for shutting down plays then means I can go into my own turn using my own Albaz fusion plays to get out my big boss monsters on the field without having any fear of my opponent trying to stop me. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. I run 2 Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. You need 1 Fallen of Albaz and 1 Fusion Synchro Xyz or Link monster. You can only control 1 Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon, and once per turn quick effect, you can send 1 Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material to banish 1 monster on the field, but you cannot activate this effect the following turn as well. And also, if this card, its owner's possession, leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase of this turn. Another destruction card, it really does help for making your opponent play around this card because they'll either lose everything they have on the field, but also you have the option to take away cards that they may control as well using it. I also run 2 Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, one of another new cards from the deck. It needs 1 Dark Monster and 1 Fallen of Albaz. If it's Fusion Summon, you can discard 1 card to Fusion Summon 1 level 8 or lower Fusion Monster from your extra deck except for Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, by shuffling fusion materials mentioned on it from the deck or from monsters on the field or graveyard and or banished. And for the rest of this turn, this card cannot attack. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except for fusion monsters. So this resource for you being able to fusion summon out those monsters means that you can just summon out a level 8 or higher fusion, level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck. Gives you plenty of options with the Shaddoll lineup that we're also running in this deck for some cards you may want to recycle to then reuse again for those cards. I also run 2 Albion, the Branded Dragon. You need a Fallen of Albaz and a Light Monster. Using that light resources of my opponents with Fallen of Albaz is why I like running this card in the deck. And if it's Fusion Summon, you can Fusion Summon 1 level 8 or lower Fusion Monster from your extra deck except for Albion by banishing the fusion materials mentioned from your hand, field, and or graveyard. So more of a reverse option compared to Lubellion banishing, and then Lubellion can shuffle them back into the deck for you to use. The Iron Dash Dragon and the Titanclad also come up as very handy for the fusion plays, with Iron Dash being able to change positions and columns and destroy cards, and Titanclad needing a monster with 2,500 or more attack to be used on the field also. And for some of the other fusion monsters in the deck, I run the 1 Guardian Chimera. Once again, one of the more powerhouses in the deck, needing 3 monsters with different names. It must first be fusion summoned using only fusion material from your hand and or field, with at least 1 monster from each. If this card's fusion summoned by a spell card or effect, you can draw cards equal to the number of cards used as material from the hand. And if you do, destroy cards your opponent controls equal to the number of cards from the field. So depending on what you use for this card, it can really come up as a destruction play against your opponent, and also the added benefit, as I said before, of being used by summoning it with polymerization, not being able to be targeted by your opponent's card effects. It uses your own cards, so you can't use super polymerization to make it, sadly, but you have plenty of other fusion plays using this card to get it out on the field. I also run the 1 El Shaddoll Winda, the 1 Construct, and the 1 Abkalon for the Shaddoll lineup for all of our plays, needing 2 Shaddoll monsters for Abkalon, the Light Monster for Construct along with the Shaddoll, and then the Dark Attribute with 1 Shaddoll for Winda, which can all be easily used with the many different Albaz support cards we run in the main deck. And then for the rest of the extra deck, I run 1 Predaplant Dragostapelia, 1 Starving Venom, and the 1 Triple Vertum. More of the generic support that you can use Fallen of Albaz to make using your opponent's own cards, but they're also here mostly for the super polymerization targets in the deck as well. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, the Branded Fusion will come up a lot for what you can fusion summon onto the deck. You want to get the Mirror Jade Dragon onto the field as quickly as you can, because then being able to then have the option for your Lubellion Dragon to fusion summon this card out means you can have both as resources to then just make more fusion plays, but also playing more of a control game against your opponent. Using Branded Fusion to fusion summon 1 monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz by using 2 monsters from your hand, deck, or field means you can also send those resources to the graveyard for that fusion setup. The first one will be Lubellion, because you'll send Fallen of Albaz, and then the one additional Dark Monster, which can be the 2-card setup to then go for that play. And then summoning this card out means you can then go for more of a fusion play of a level 8 or a lower monster on the field by shuffling those cards back into the deck to then summon out your Mirror Jade onto the field. Also relying on more of the quick play setup, you can take up a normal summon with Fallen of Albaz, but if your opponent controls that monster, you can special summon the Incredible Ecclesia onto the field and then get Fallen of Albaz that much more quickly and use its own fusion play for the discard of a card, which depending on what you discard, you can also use cards like Branded Retribution in the graveyard a lot more quickly since you discarded it as the cost for Fallen of Albaz. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoy the video. Like I said, definitely happy that this structure deck came out. It has with a lot of additional staple support that people have been looking for, but also a more fun take on the Fusion deck, and definitely will be a wide variety of different plays that people can use, whether you mix in the Despia cards, you go for the Shaddoll build, or more of a generic Fusion play. All are available to you with this deck. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.